So a few of my viewers have asked me to make a video about maps, specifically about how many monsters each of these maps have and which maps are worth doing, which ones are, which ones you should skip. And so I actually compiled some data about that. I went ahead and I did each of these different maps in each of the regions, right? So I did a total of 60 maps because each region has 12 maps. And then I wrote down the amount of monsters there are in each map, and we'll kind of draw some conclusions from that. Now, one thing you need to remember is that some of these numbers are going to be a little bit inaccurate because, when I go into a map, I can show you. So let's use Weeping Mines as an example. So I'm going to go into Weeping Mines, and as you can see, it has 373 monsters in it, right? Now, if I go into Weeping Mines again, it's probably going to have a little bit higher or a little bit lower. So this is the second Weeping Mines. This one has 344. So there seems to be a variance of about 30 monster count between each of the different instances you open these maps. But overall, I mean, it should give us a fairly accurate representation of how many monsters there are in each of these different maps. Alright, so this is the data that I collected. As I said, I went into each of the different maps. I looked at the amount of monsters there are in each of the maps, and then I just recorded it, and I did some very basic analytics and statistics down here. If you guys want, I could do something more with this, but I wasn't really sure if there was anything of value that I could have added for this section down here. But if you guys have any suggestions, be sure to let me know. What I did is I highlighted the best map to do in green and the worst map to do in red in each of the different regions, right? So this should basically give you a rough idea of how many monsters there are, which ones are the maps to look out for, which ones you should absolutely avoid unless it's like, an early map in your rotation and you're just kind of doing it just to get that inheritance bonus for your subsequent maps. Now, talking about this kind of very basic statistics side of this, as you can see, I recorded minimum, maximum amount of monsters in each of these maps, and then the variance between the minimum and the maximum. And so just going by this, obviously Blistering Lava has by far the biggest variance because of, these first two maps, and then it kind of tapers down from there. Besides these two, this region is actually somewhat balanced. These maps are not too bad. Most of these maps are, 300 plus monsters, so that's, I think, is kind of acceptable. But you can see that in each of these different regions, for example, Steel Forge has two maps that are actually below 200 monsters, while some of these other regions don't have a single map that is under 200. Now, there is some variance, obviously, so as I showed you guys before, maybe if I did Grove of Calamity again, this may be under 200, this may be a low number, so it may be over 230, something like that. I have no idea, but overall this still gives us a fairly accurate representation. So as you can see, the two best regions to do are Thunder Wastes and Voidlands, and that's because each of these regions have over 360 average monsters for each of these maps. So that's way more than some of these other regions. I mean, if you look at Steel Forge, for example, there's a difference of 80 monsters on average, 80 more monsters that you're killing in Thunder Wastes and Voidlands compared to Steel Forge, just regularly mapping, not even paying attention to this. That's way more loot that you're missing out on. So, if you have a choice between farming one region or the other, you should definitely take this into account, because the amount of monsters you kill, as I said, is directly related to the amount of loot that you're actually getting, right? I mean, makes sense. You kill more monsters, you get more loot. Uh, it's kind of self-explanatory. Now, is this something that's a problem with the game? I would say so. This is because uh, now, is this a problem? Yes. There should absolutely be more regulation between the amount of monsters there are in each of these maps. I mean, you look at some of the other action RPGs similar to Torchlight Infinite, like Path of Exile, for example. PoE has bigger and smaller maps, but the amount of monsters in each map is relatively the same. And I think when you're going off of a PoE like framework, which Torchlight Infinite absolutely is, this is something you should also be copying, right? Because it can feel quite bad to do a map that you kind of invested a lot of currency into. So I would say this is something that they should absolutely fix and normalize. I don't think there should be a higher variance here on this line, bigger than 100. I think, variance of 100 monsters is kind of acceptable, but there should never be this much of a variance between the best and the worst maps, especially when people don't know how many monsters there are on each map unless they go out of their way, open up Excel, and do what I did and create a whole Excel workbook to kind of write down what they found. And so I think this is doing kind of a big disservice to a lot of the casual players because it leaves them feeling quite bad once they complete kind of a juice map and they're expecting to get a lot of loot and they just walk away with 3 FE, right? I mean, this happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. It's kind of unfortunate that this is the case, but I mean, the game is in the beta, so this is all subject to change, and hopefully they change it. They should definitely, as I said, be looking to normalize these variance numbers uh, across these different regions for sure. Alright, so that was just a quick little video I wanted to do. I thought it was an interesting topic, and some of you have asked for it, so I figured I would do it. If you want more content like this, if you want me to maybe expand on this a little more, if you have any other ideas as to how I could expand on this, etc., let me know in the comments. Leave a like, leave a sub. Also, follow me on Twitch. I stream every once in a while, so I hope to see you there. All right, peace.